Hi, it's Froggy Friday. Thanks for joining me today. We are going to make a giant frog. I'm going to show you in a second just how big it is. This is going to be a lot of fun. Look, that's the size of the frog I normally make. The beads I'm using, as well as some molds later on, are provided courtesy of Beebeecraft as part of their YouTube creator program. If you have 100 or more subscribers, you can join the program. You can receive cool stuff to try out in your videos too. Check out the link in my description, and don't forget to use my code to save money. I'm going to be putting the beads in using my normal method of UV resin, and I am using Counterculture DIY's UV resin. They have a deal going on right now where you can use the code 20% and the word off to get 20% off your order of $100 or more. So I highly encourage you to check that out. This is my favorite UV resin by far. These green agate beads are very angular in their cut, and I thought this would be a really cool contrast with the rounded lines of the frog itself. I continue the geometric theme by using cubes as inclusions later on as well. I gave up on the tweezers. With all of the angles, I just could not keep a hold of them. My fingers worked much better. This is a part of a collaboration with many other artists, so make sure you go check them out. That playlist link will be in my description. You won't want to miss it. I give this a cure for 2 minutes on the top and the bottom, so I do end up flipping my UV lamp over. You want to make sure you do that on both sides so the UV resin is totally cured. And now for the cubes. I'm going to be making UV resin cubes, and I'm using this Hypershift powder from Designer Epoxy. This stuff is just gorgeous and sparkly, and I don't like to hide it in colored resin. So I thought, well, I'm gonna make it clear anyhow. I may as well just make these out of UV resin. And these molds are great for that because they are clear, so you can cure it on all sides. I start off very neatly spooning the resin in. I eventually give up and just sort of plop it in there. Patience is a virtue I clearly don't have. I'm sure you can relate at times. I'm only going to be making a few of these. I don't want a ton of these because the angles will kind of disappear in the clear resin. I wanted the sparkle to look like it was suspended in the resin. We will see how successful I was later on. I gave these a 2-minute cure on the top and the bottom. And now it's time to demold. Those just pop right out of there. I'll be making other cubes out of different colors of mica powder, and I'm using the Let's Resin Crystal Clear Epoxy Resin for this. It is a regular setting 1:1 epoxy. The micas I'm using are from Designer Epoxy. The first color is pistachio green. This actually strikes me as much more of an avocado green. You'll have to tell me if you agree. And I don't need to have a whole lot of these. The frog is big, but it's not that big, so I don't need a ton of cubes. And I do want to do multiple sizes in each of the 3 colors. I have to say, these are pretty small, and it's not the easiest thing to pour, especially because right now I have a bit of a tremor in my hands, and I make kind of a big mess. I really try not to create a whole bunch of excess waste, so I do reuse cups frequently. I just make sure everything in them is totally cured. Now I'm going in with spring green. This is such a beautiful green. It looks like an emerald green. It really does remind me of spring, so I think that's perfect for a frog. Yeah, there's the mess. I thought about using a pipette, but I think that would have been more trouble than it's worth. And now I'm using this amazing purple. It's called Midnight Purple. Again, these are from Designer Epoxy. I would wear this if I could. In fact, I actually have a lot of clothing that color, and it also happens to be the color I dye my hair. If your favorite color is also purple, you have to order this. It's just beautiful. These get an overnight cure, and now it's time to demold and check out my cubes. These are great as inclusions, but you could also use them with either some UV resin or glue, and you could make, for example, raindrops on another resin piece, something like that. They're very handy to have around. I suggest you keep those when you make a mess like I do. These took me about 6 years to demold, but I did get there in the end. And we're getting ready to pour the resin in our frog, but I totally forgot to add the eyes. I'm doing those with the Agate beads as well. I use the same method as the toes. I'm using UV resin. That cup has cured resin in it. It's not actually yellow. Now, the reason I use UV resin to tack these in place is because I don't want them floating. This kind of a thing could float and move if you just place it in the resin pour itself. I'm using the regular setting 1:1 crystal clear epoxy from Let's Resin Again. I used about 85 to 90 milliliters total for this first layer. And I want to make sure that these sparkly ones are on the top layer. So of course this is inverted, so the layer I'm pouring now will actually be the top when we flip the frog over. Otherwise you really wouldn't see them. I only used some of the cubes for this first layer. Here I am, popping bubbles. This layer will get an overnight cure. There are a few bubbles, but all in all, it looks pretty good. Now, what you don't see me doing here, off screen, is lighting my resin on fire. I channeled my inner Karen from the Dragon's Cave. Love you, Karen. Someone really should take this torch away from me. I should not be using it in a cup to get rid of bubbles. Don't be like me. Use caution. So here I'm looking at it saying to myself, did I just ruin my resin? And I decided I had not ruined the resin, but I do have a few issues with this layer as far as being a bit cloudy. The clarity just wasn't there, and I think I really should have just dumped that out and started over. But I didn't want to waste the resin, so I just went with it. I'm just keeping this frog, so since it's just for me, I didn't really worry about it. Here I'm adding the rest of the cubes, and I am trying to strategically place them a bit. Since I only did 3 different colors, the colors end up next to themselves quite a bit. I think it looks okay though. You'll have to tell me what you think. Look at me using alcohol and not a flame. I'm being safe this time. I decided I wanted a cube in each of the elbows and each of the knees. Are they frog knees? I don't know if you call them knees or not, but I'm gonna call them knees. This layer has cured overnight, and I am now putting on my final layer. I'm going to be using opaque white and also some glittery, sparkly alcohol ink. I want to make sure you can still see those beads in the toes. With the addition of the pigment paste, the white resin is heavier than the clear resin that just has alcohol ink. So I'm going to pour this in first, and it is going to go a little bit into the feet, but once I pour that clear, it should push that white resin into the middle of the frog, and it should settle there. The white kind of reminds me of milk, which made me instantly want a cup of tea. You'll see after I pour the clear that I didn't have quite enough resin. I made a little bit more and poured that in off camera. I'm trying so hard not to get any micro bubbles in the chin. We shall see. This is Marabou Glitter Alcohol Ink. Make sure you shake this up like a Polaroid picture. It is so sparkly. It's gorgeous. I love this stuff. As I'm pouring this clear into the feet, you'll eventually see it start to seep into the middle of the frog. This is exactly what I wanted to happen, so I'm really pleased at this point. Since those are beads in the toes, they do have a hollow inside, which does create some bubbles. I do my best to get them out, but there are going to still be a few at the end. After a few hours in my curing machine, this frog is ready to demold. I will say this, a larger frog mold makes for a larger pain in the ass to demold. I get there eventually, but not without some frustration. I love the way this frog turned out. I think it's really cool, and I love how big it is. It's like the king of all the other frogs. Froggy kiss. A lot of us made giant frogs this week because we all got this mold sort of around the same time. So definitely check out the playlist because there's lots of more frog kings to be had, and even some frog queens. Don't forget to check out Beebeecraft's YouTube creator program. Again, that link will be in my description. It's a very cool program to be a part of. I hope your weekend is hoppin'. I couldn't help myself, sorry. Thanks for hopping by. I'll see you soon.